Okay, cool. All right, so today we're going to talk about the arch nemesis of productivity, and that is procrastination. So what it is the act of delaying or putting off tasks until the last minute. And to understand why we do it, we do need to take a look at our brain first. So let's dive in. So when we procrastinate, there is an argument going on in our heads between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex, that's our thinking brain. It wants us to work, knows we have something important to do. It's there to help us sit and achieve goals. But when we face a threatening stimulus and I can't pronounce this word very well, amygdala kicks in, which is part of the limbic system, our feeling brain. Now, this part of the brain wants to feel good and seek pleasure. It will choose to watch another episode of Gilmore Girls if you're me, or lately I've been watching Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. Or you can see what's happening on Instagram before you're starting a task just to have a quick look. So if we're feeling overwhelmed by something or dread the work ahead, our anxiety and stress levels rise, which means our intelligent prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that wants us to succeed, shuts down. The amygdala, sorry, I can't pronounce words, kicks in, and it helps us escape the unpleasant work ahead of us. So back in the caveman days, this was useful, and it would try and keep us as actually surviving. It was the fight or flight mechanism, but it's not really life or death when it comes to work. So just remember, we are hardwired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's just how we're wired. So we want pleasure rather than discomfort. And I want to frame that up so you guys know you're not an awful person if you procrastinate. And the good news is that with some self-awareness and a little practice, you can actually overcome it. And I definitely procrastinate as well. Cool. So now there's loads of research on this. So it's not an emerging science or anything. There's loads of different names for procrastination styles. So I've just chosen one that feels quite aligned with me, and I'll share the article that this comes from if you want to dive in further when I send it out later today. But let me know if you resonate with any of these as we go. Feel free to pop it in the chat. So the first one is the perfectionist fear. So if you have a fear of not getting it done or a fear of failure, it's often driven by deep mindset hurdles like self-doubt or confidence. Now, we won't go into that today too much because that's a whole other topic. But if you've ever sat in a meeting and chosen not to raise your hand or share an idea, you've probably faced this one. If you want to launch something, but you just keep putting it off because you're sweating the small stuff and overthinking it, this could also be you. And it's definitely been me at times as well. This is my kryptonite. So the solution is to visualize yourself completing the task well, and put in your best effort and move forward. So remember, there's no such thing as perfect. So dare to be imperfect. And my favorite mantra for this one is done is better than perfect. But in saying that, I have to constantly remind myself of this. Like, it definitely doesn't come easy, and it's not as easy as saying, oh yeah, done is better than perfect. It's not truly that simple, but it's something that you can keep reminding yourself of over and over. Let's see. Amygdala, thank you for sharing the pronouncement of that. But yeah, drop in the chat if you feel like any of these are you as well. And let's jump into the second one, which is the dreamer's lack of action. So you're really creative, you're full of ideas, but you're never quite able to bring them to life. And the main reason for this is because there's usually no structure or goal setting involved once you've actually had the idea. So again, I feel like a lot of these apply to me as well. You might also have a wandering mind. You might sort of see great sparkly things everywhere you go, which is normal for creatives. So the solution to this one is finding some structure. So once you have your idea, write it down, get a timeline, talk about what you want to actually achieve. Yes, a few of you are definitely resonating with this one. So if you can do this daily to keep yourself on track and accountable, it's about putting kind of a bit of structure in place for you, and cultivating the focus is essential because creative minds tend to jump from one idea to the next. So virtual co-working is a great structure for that one. And yeah, a few people, all of these at different times. Absolutely. Definitely Bianca. I think there is definitely some ADHD. There's tendencies to procrastinate in that as well. But I will not pretend to be an expert on that. Loving all this chat in the chat box. So let's jump into the third one. I'm going to keep going so we can make the rest of our break. So the third one is the overwhelmed avoider. The complexity of the task causes the brain to lose motivation and avoid doing it altogether. So you'd rather choose something that keeps you in the comfort zone and feels more enjoyable. This can actually cause stress and dread when the harder task inevitably comes up to be completed. So I know some of you are kind of picking tasks that you've been procrastinating on. You might fall into this category because, it's just too hard, but it's a really good kind of task to bring to co-working because we can kind of get you at least started. And it's kind of like cramming for exams. We've all done that before. We've stayed up to the last minute. We've created this stress on ourselves, but we didn't really need to. So the solution for this one is to break the challenge into smaller tasks and tackle each one individually, and reward yourself as you go. We like a reward. So when we're tackling like a big thing, we can break it down and get, maybe some little rewards along the way. All right, two more. So number 4 is the busy bee who lacks procrastination. Prioritization. I've got procrastination on the brain. So you either have too many tasks or you don't truly acknowledge that each task has a different level of importance. And the result is getting nothing done. So you're constantly task switching, spending too much time deciding what to do and trying to decide what's important. And it's something that's really tricky when we feel overwhelmed. So yeah, this one comes up a lot, and the solution for this is really prioritizing. So you've got to know how to choose what tasks are important versus urgent. So what happens if our inbox will ping and we think it's urgent, so we'll go and jump into that. We really want that quick fix and that quick dopamine hit, but it's actually not our most important tasks, and it's not moving us towards our goal. So there is a tool called the Eisenhower box, which is really helpful to create that prioritization and help you kind of figure out what's important and what's not so important. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that later this week, but if you want to look at it sooner, there is a recent post on our socials with that as well. And the last type is the distraction prone. So research has shown that our brains are not wired to focus for long periods of time, and we'll go and look for something else. So it's only natural. And that's why Pomodoro and this style of virtual co-working is really helpful for some people too. So the solution is just to be mindful of your workspace and potential distractions. Scheduling times to do tasks like checking your emails, that can be really helpful. Things like Pomodoro are obviously great too because you can focus for a little while and then take a break. And again, I feel like I resonate with all of these different points, and a few of you have said the same thing. So the good news is that we can cultivate new habits to beat procrastination. So you are not a procrastinator, you just happen to procrastinate. It's not ingrained, that you are. It's something that you can change. And like everything, you can learn ways to get yourself out of it. So one of my favorite productivity hacks of all time is by James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, and he says to just begin. So once we start, we can get momentum. And even if you just put a timer on for 2 minutes on that task that you really don't want to do, you'll probably find you start feeling like you're making little progress, and you can kind of keep going once you've built that initial little momentum, and keep building some more. So that is us done for the productivity pep talk for today.